going on, everybody? Tello Talk Podcast back once again with another podcast episode, and today this is episode number 13. Um, the NFL season just went to their halfway point. The college football season just finished their first week after their inaugural college football playoff rankings. And today I'm going to be going over the college football aspect as the NFL season has. NFL week, has not come to a close just yet, as we have Baltimore playing New Orleans tonight. And best of luck for both teams. Let's go New Orleans. Let's get a win. We don't get very many of them. So we're gonna get going, and today I'm gonna be a little more specific in the college football world. I'm not just gonna go through and talk about every game or talk about a bunch of games. I will talk about some of them, depending on which the relevance to some of the things that we talking about today. However, it is going to be a top 25 ranking. I haven't done any of these in a while. The last time I did it, I think UGA, aka Georgia, was almost the consensus number one. I believe it was actually. We all three had it. Today's just going to be me, however. And today, let's just get it started. Let's stop procrastinating. We'll just go through the top 25. I'll put 25 through 20, not much to say about them other than what they did this week. I won't go in depth until like maybe the top 12, top 10, because that's one of the teams I would like to talk about more. Starting off at 25, I'm going to have Kansas State. They recently just lost to Texas when they were ranked 13. They were 6-2. Now, did Texas kind of prove something? I would say so, although they did only score 3 second-half points against Kansas State. Kansas State did kind of start a comeback, however, did not finish the comeback. I'm not trying to hate on Kansas State or anything, but they could have played better in the first half. That definitely would have benefited off of them. They only scored 10 points in the first half. Going down 31-10 at halftime is very demoralizing. And that's something you don't want to see as a squad. So that's why Kansas State's at 25. Florida State, I put at 24. They were ranked 25 last week. No, they were not ranked 25 last week. Sorry. I believe they might have been unranked. I don't know if they played. Just give me 1 second. So Florida State was unranked, but they absolutely dominated Miami. Sorry. Yes. I had to think about it for a second. They, did not let up. The reason why I put them at 24 is because of that absolute dominant win. Miami may not be very good. They're 4-5 this year, but they do deserve to be ranked at 6-3. They're having a better season than they have in the past. So good for them. And then at 23, got UCF, which is recently the number 25 team. They are 7-2. They had a pretty good game against Memphis, who only given up 1 touchdown per quarter, which is still 28 points, was quite a bit. They played pretty well, and they just kind of held it down. 22, this one's a big one. Notre Dame absolutely clobbered Clemson, 35-14. It was only 14-0 going into the fourth, and Clemson just fell apart. I mean, Notre Dame had a pick six, the block punt for a touchdown. They looked like a good team, and if we take away the beginning of their season, they had a very rough beginning of their season, and they're not looking like that beginning of the season team. There's no chance they make the playoff, obviously, at 6-3, and I don't think there's a chance that Clemson now makes the playoff at 8-1. But it was a very dominant win for Notre Dame, and it kind of was an eye-opening win, first eye-opening win they've had this season with the new head coach. 21, I put Washington. They played Oregon State on Friday, beat them by 3 with setting up a game-winning field goal for them. I like Washington a lot, especially I like Michael Penix Jr. Early in the season, I said he was my dark horse MVP, not MVP, Heisman candidate. I don't know if he is still. I would say my dark horse now is Max Duggan, quarterback at TCU. But he's still looking promising. I mean, he leads the league and leads the nation, in passing yards. But Washington's just a good team. Look out for them trying to make some dangerous moves, trying to make something happen in the Pac-12. Maybe some upsets. Uh, because I do believe they play some of the later teams, such as they play Oregon next week, so we could see possibly an upset there. And then so to get on going more, we got number 20, we got Illinois. Unfortunately for Illinois fans, they just took the L this week to Michigan State, and who is not a very impressive Michigan State team. It kind of helped Mel Tucker a little bit from Michigan State's head coach to kind of make sure, oh yeah, he can still beat good teams. But Illinois, I don't know if they're a good team. I mean, DeVito still played pretty well. Brown played amazing. He had 136 yards on the ground. Just no touchdown. There's 2 touchdowns in the air, and that was it. They just couldn't get in the end zone. And that's a big problem. And I put them at 20. All right, so that's starting off. We're going to 19. We'll just speed it up real quick. 19, 18, 17, 16, 15. I'll talk a little bit more about 17. However, I won't tell you who it is just yet. 19 that I have at 19 is North Carolina State. So I put North Carolina State at 19. They had a good win against Wake Forest, who unfortunately I think dropped 2 games in a row. They were 6-1 at one point, and North Carolina State at 7-2. They're kind of that team that always stays around that higher place, but they're not gonna ever make it to the ACC championship because of Clemson. I believe they are in the same division as Clemson in that conference. So that's kind of their problem, but they looked good on Saturday against a Wake Forest team who has a very good quarterback, and they forced 3 interceptions. So that's my biggest talk on that. The fact that they forced 3 interceptions from a pretty good quarterback is kind of basically the main factor why they won that game. And then going into 18, we've got Liberty. Liberty, the sole team from, I think they are 8-1 and whatever conference they are in. They might be in the Conference USA. They might be independent. I do not remember. But Liberty is just one of those fun teams to root for. Yeah, they're an independent. And they beat Arkansas, who Arkansas was originally at the beginning of the season was actually very highly ranked. However, they didn't score any second half points, and they gave up 16 points in the second half. That's something a little bit scary and a little bit shaky to think about if you're go to Liberty or you're a Liberty fan. Is that second half production? But I mean, an 8-1 school definitely deserves to be ranked, especially it's Liberty, who's been a pretty solid program. Their coach kind of reviving his career at Liberty. So that's why I've got them at 18, and then 17 I've got none other than the University of Texas. The University of Texas at 17. They just beat number 13 Kansas State. Texas now 6-3 on the year. They're 4-2 in the Big 12. They've got a big one. They've got a big one next week. Probably TCU's biggest matchup of the year. They have to host TCU in Austin. Another thing I noticed in the Texas game is that it's another 3-point second half, and that's not something you want to see. A team not being able to finish strong, especially with them playing TCU next week, who is been a team to be actually able to close out games and find great teams find great ways to win. That's what TCU's been doing. Quinn Ewers, however, did look pretty good out there. That's something that you need. And then Bijan Robinson, 209 yards. Dude, this guy has always been that. He's always been that guy, and he's showing it. He just keeps on showing it. I know he has a little bit of a lackluster year so far, I'd say. Actually, I don't even know if you can say that. I mean, for his standards, what everybody was expecting, maybe. But he's still, like, averaging 100 almost every game. He's got, ever since September 17th, he's had 100 yards or more in the game. And that's very eye-popping. This dude's just an absolute animal, but still, like, 1,129 yards in 9 games. You wouldn't expect him. You'd expect him to honestly have more. But he's just a beast. He's an animal. He's a beast. He's a first-round draft pick in the NFL. So just be ready to see his name everywhere. And they've got a big one next week. All right, moving on. Number 16, I've got Tulane. Tulane. They played Tulsa. Beat Tulsa 27 to 13. They're 8-1 as well. Put them at 16, moving them up three spots. And most people be like, "Why'd you move them up three spots after beating a 3-5 Tulsa team?" Because Tulane is the fun team of this year. Tulane and Liberty are the two fun teams of this year. And I love watching teams that nobody expects to be good be good. To be honest, I did not watch the Tulane game. I mean, there's probably a lot better games on at that time. However, the fact that they only gave up 3 points in the second half kind of shows that they decided they went to that locker room at halftime, said, "Listen, we're only up by 7. We need to shut this team down and finish this game and get out of here." And that's what they did. Their defense just played great. So I've moved them up three spots for that. And then number 15, we've got the 8-1 Tar Heels. How about them Tar Heels? North Carolina snuck out a victory against Virginia, also only giving up one touchdown per quarter. Drake May is someone who's impressing me quite a bit. I mean, fourth in yards, first in touchdowns, only 3 interceptions in third in QBR. That is super impressive. He is somebody who should be getting looked at. He is a freshman as well. That's the thing. He is somebody that already should be getting pro attention if you're putting up numbers like that in your freshman year of college. Um, and I mean, North Carolina's always had a strong running game, and they had 162 yards on the ground, with Drake May having 74 of them. I mean, a freshman quarterback throwing for 300 yards and 74 on the ground. You don't see that very often, especially from North Carolina. I love seeing North Carolina go be 8-1 right now, and I'm gonna be if they'd never lost their game against Notre Dame, they probably would be in my top 8, and that's something that's crazy to think is that North Carolina basketball school would be in my top 8 if they didn't have dropped a loss. They're in the top 15 regardless. Are they really a basketball school if they're in the top 15? I don't know. I don't know. Well, we're gonna move on. We got some bigger teams, bigger known names. 14, we've got the former Rose Bowl losers. 14 is Utah, 7-2. They won 45-20 against Arizona. However, Arizona's not really that good of a team. Checking up on Cameron Rising. He isn't having the most eye-popping season, but Cameron Rising really doesn't need to, and they've got a guy they've got guys just who can make plays all across the field. They just make plays, and he might be missing some pieces from last year. Utah, I think, definitely is, especially because they have 2 losses this year, and they only had 2 losses after the Rose Bowl last year. Or sorry, I think they had 2 going into the Rose Bowl. Utah still has a chance at a pretty good bowl game. However, they are the fourth highest ranked Pac-12 team, which is pretty crazy to think that there's 3 teams better than Utah. The Pac-12 is very strong this year, however. It's very strong. It's going to be very hard to see a Pac-12 team make the playoff, though. That's my thing. But I'm going to have Utah at 14. And coming at 13, I've got Penn State. They absolutely dominated Indiana. Indiana's not very good this year. But I'm not going to take that away from Penn State. They're a 7-2 squad. That's a pretty legit squad. They've got 2 losses, one against Ohio State and one against Michigan. 2 very good teams, 2 of my top 4s. So I don't think I don't penalize them for that. I mean, 2 losses to those 2 teams are something that you really can't be too worried about. All they really have to do is they can make a very good bowl game. I don't think they'll make the Rose Bowl or whatever bowl game the Big Ten's going to be associated with, because I think the Rose Bowl might be in the playoff this year. Because Ohio State and Michigan, there's no way both of them make it. They're not in the SEC. They're not going to have that happen. And they're also in the same division in the Big Ten. So that's not going to really benefit them. Only one or the other can make the Big Ten championship. So with that, I think Penn State will still be in a pretty promising bowl game. I think they'll have a good finish to their season. There's no reason why they shouldn't finish their season 10-2. But we'll just have to see from there. Maybe Michigan State gives them a run for their money the last game of the season, but I don't see that happening. Okay. So moving on to number 12. This team talked about earlier, Clemson. They ruined, they completely ruined their playoff chances. Um, People are saying they need to make a QB change. I don't know if I fully agree. I kind of do, but DJ, I'm not even gonna try. But he just isn't looking like how he everybody thought he was gonna be back in high school. Only 18 touchdowns this year, only averaging two per game. Excuse me. It's not something that you want from your for number one prospect in the entire nation. I mean, they've had a lot of games where they've been a little too close. I mean, they only beat Syracuse by 6, Florida State by 6, Wake Forest in double overtime. And then other than that, I mean, North Carolina State you could say by 10. It's just not promising, man. Like he just doesn't look great out there. It seems like DJ is being somewhat maybe carried by the run game, but I can't really say that because they still don't have a 1,000-yard rusher. It's just this team is capable. Clemson's always capable because they've had such great recruiting in the past. It's so crazy to see them not be fully to that Deshaun Watson potential, Trevor Lawrence potential back in college when they were there. It's just even though they're 8-1, it's still a really good season. I'm used to seeing Clemson go 12-0, 13-0, 15-0, winning the championship, 14-1, losing in the championship. Not losing to a 6-3 Notre Dame team. And only scoring and being shut out first three quarters. That's not what I'm used to seeing from Clemson at all. And that's a little disappointing to me. However, I'm not really the biggest Clemson fan, so I'm fine with them taking a loss. And I dropped them down to 12 just because I think that's where they need that's a good spot for them. Yeah, I would have dropped them down lower if Notre Dame wasn't as good as they were. Since Notre Dame's now ranked, I couldn't drop them down anymore. Excuse me. And we'll move on to number 11 is the Ole Miss Rebels. I put the Ole Miss Rebels at 11. I just kind of kept, I think that's where they were in the actual rankings, just at 11. Didn't really want to mess with them anywhere or I just want to keep them there because there's really no point in moving them. I believe they didn't play this week. They've got a big one against Alabama, and I would love to see them beat Alabama because a 3-loss Alabama would be crazy. Something that we've never seen in it seems like in a century. A 3-loss Alabama team, and Ole Miss has the potential to do that with Lane Kiffin. I mean, they're 8-1. They've got a great season going on right now. Love their coach. But they've got a big challenge with Alabama. Alabama's always going to be a hard challenge. I mean, but Jackson Dart doing pretty okay. I'd say he's doing okay for his first year in Ole Miss. But the rushing attack is very eye opening. They've got Judkins with 1,000 and 13 touchdowns, and then also they've got Zach Evans, the former TCU Horned Frog. He's also got a 680 on the ground and 7 touchdowns. So the fact that they've got a dual-headed running attack is very beneficial to Ole Miss's game plan. But we'll just have to see how it goes from here. Playing a very good Crimson Tide squad, who speaking of them, they're going to be next in our rankings. They're at number 10. And the reason why I put them at number 10 is Alabama it's just 2-loss Alabama, man. Like, every time they lose more than a game, the world ends. I mean, I just don't really know what to say about that one. I mean, they've lost 2 in the past 3 weeks. That Tennessee game, I think I kind of predicted that. I kind of knew Tennessee would win that game. Not much. Their defense has been, I'd say, the biggest question mark for those past 2 games. But Bryce Young, for instance, Bryce Young's looking amazing. Still looking like a top 10 pick. They don't really have as much of a running game. They still do have a running game, though. Don't get it twisted. But they just need more interceptions, to be honest. Their defense, like, They've got 3 interceptions on the year, and you don't and what 3 fumble recoveries. So they only have 5 takeaways. This is from an incredibly historically incredible defense for Alabama. Um, they've recent years always had defense, and the fact that they only have 5 takeaways is a little eye open to me. And you kind of get worried if you're an Alabama fan. Like, are you lose to Miss and drop even rankings? Is Alabama dynasty, or not gonna is this gonna affect recruiting in the future? That teams like LSU have beaten Alabama and Tennessee, and it's like, are those going to hurt Alabama's recruiting? Is that gonna hurt them? Because if it does, that's when you get to the point and you're like, we got to start focusing. Um, However, they did have a great fourth quarter, scoring two touchdowns and a field goal. Um, just Bryce Young definitely outplayed Jalen Daniels, but Jalen Daniels, no, he didn't. Honestly, he didn't. He just had more yards. He had less touchdowns. I mean, Jalen Daniels had 95. Jalen Daniels had 95 on the ground and a touchdown, and 182 and 2 in the air. While Bryce Young may have had 328 yards, but he had 1 touchdown and an interception. I can't say he really outplayed him if he only had more yards. I mean, that run that Jalen Daniels had in overtime was absolutely incredible, and a great play call on the 2-point conversion to win it. And I'm pretty sure Bryce Young's only touchdown, no, the overtime his touchdown was towards the end of the game as a 41-yarder. But their only really promising drive was that touchdown throw. The rest of them, I mean, they kicked 4 field goals. Alabama kicked 4 field goals. Alabama's never going to win a game if they end up having to kick 4 field goals. And that's a big problem. That's why I've got them at number 10. And then going into number 9, we've got 2 guys who are formerly Oklahoma Sooners. I've got USC. USC at number 9. They were at number 9 to start this last week. They played Cal. They only beat Cal by 6. That's the thing. And most people that I were talking to has UCLA behind USC, as UCLA was 12. USC I just don't see too much hype. Barely beat Oregon State. Barely beat a 3-6 Arizona squad that got absolutely demolished by Utah, who once again Utah beat the Trojans. And then barely beat California. It's not a team that I want to rank at 7 or 6 or 8. It's a team that's on the brink of getting out of the top 10. And then, for instance, as if we look at a UCLA, who I have at number 8, they're close games. Washington, which is a good squad. That's really about it. They beat Utah by 10. And other than that, Arizona State by 14. They lost to Oregon by 15, but Oregon's definitely the best team in the Pac-12. It's just UCLA has better close wins against better opponents, while USC has close wins against a little bit shakier of opponents. Teams you would be like, really? They only beat that team by 3, or they only beat that team by 4, they only beat that team by a touchdown. So that's why I've got USC at 9, and then UCLA at 8. I will say Caleb Williams has looked pretty good at USC this year. Lincoln Riley's doing pretty good with coaching. I mean, Caleb Williams has 28 touchdowns and 1 interception. And then Addison, the receiver from Pitt, 585 and 7 touchdowns. I mean, they're connecting. They're connecting on multiple levels, which is good for USC. It's just they might be 8-1, but I just don't think they're better than UCLA right now. But we will definitely see when they play each other in 2 weeks. And then for UCLA, I've got one big guy to talk about, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He is an absolute animal. I mean, he is so electric when he plays. And then Zach Charbonnet, I think Charbonnet. I don't know. He has almost 1,000 yards on the ground. He's averaging 7.5 yards a carry. That's crazy. That is absolutely insane. He's got 10 touchdowns. This is a team that I personally think this team is better than USC because I think the coaching and the team's chemistry is better than USC's because USC's a lot of transfers this year. They're still trying to get into it. UCLA's not as many transfers. They're all together, they play together. So that's why I've got them above USC. And then at number 7, a lot of people may hate this one just because they are a 2-loss team. However, they were ranked number 10 this last week. And they proved why they are a top 10 team. It is LSU. I mean, Jalen Daniels. Jaden, sorry, not Jalen. I've been saying Jalen. Jalen Daniels is the Kansas quarterback. Jaden Daniels, the former Arizona State Sun Devil turned Tiger, has just been performing this year. He's just been performing. He doesn't have very many touchdowns in the air, but I believe he does have great running stats. Yeah, he's got 2,000 in the air and then 600 on the ground. So he's got 2,600 scrimmage yards, 24 touchdowns, and 1 interception. 24 total and 1 interception. That is so impressive from a guy who was at ASU and wasn't always doing well. His freshman year, he did great with 17-2. But that was a whole season. He had 17 yards in a whole season. And this year at LSU, he has, 17 touchdowns, and now he has 14 this year. 24 this year, and he had 20 total touchdowns then. This is something it's a dual threat. He's kind of like a Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who is an amazing dual threat quarterback, who, if I were a college team, I'd want Jaden Daniels as my quarterback. He's a good guy. He's a good quarterback. He's a solid guy. And, I mean, they may be a 2-loss squad, but I believe those 2 losses were LSU and Florida State and Tennessee. Tennessee makes sense. Tennessee is a freaking good squad. They are a good team. They may have just gotten absolutely whooped by Georgia. But Florida State, the only reason they lost to Florida State is because of that blocked extra point. Being 8-1 right now. And if they were 8-1, to be honest, I'd probably have them over Oregon at 6. And to move on, we'll go to Oregon at 6. Ever since that absolute just joke of a game against Georgia, Oregon has looked legit. Bo Nix, my friend Isaac hates him. Bo Nix, I love Bo Nix. I think he's doing a great job. He's just an absolute monster. I mean, he's almost 25, pretty much 2,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, and only 5 picks. And then on top of that, he has, I know quite a bit of, he has 457 on the ground and 13 rushing touchdowns. He has 35 touchdowns accounted for this year, and receiving touchdowns. Sorry, so he's at 36. It's just a very eye-opening thing. Bo Nix, he's having fun. He's having a great time. In Oregon squad's just good. I just love this Oregon squad. I mean, you remember the game against Washington State? They scored how many points? I think it was like 20, 28, 29 in the fourth quarter. Yeah, 29 points in the fourth quarter. No team really ever does that. And I mean, all of their wins, other than the Washington State win, 70-14, 41-20. Washington State won by 3. Stanford 45-27, 49-22, 45-30, 42-24, 49-10. They've all been solid, perfect wins. They've been games where you just know they're gonna win at the start, and it's a start to finish game where they're just got the game in the control. Now, do I agree with the comments that Bo Nix said? How he thinks Georgia, if they played Oregon, it'd probably end differently. No, Georgia would still kick the crap out of Oregon because it's Georgia. But Oregon is showing to themselves that in the college football playoff committee and in the Pac-12 that they are a playoff team. They've got Washington, Utah, and Oregon State left. So two ranked squads and then a brink ranked a team that was ranked last week until they lost to Washington. They have 3 solid games to prove themselves again until they play a team like probably USC or UCLA. And I am not going to be shocked if this team goes 12-1 and maybe makes the playoffs. It's gonna be really hard for them to make the playoffs, though, in my opinion, because there's teams like Tennessee, TCU, Michigan, and Ohio State, and Georgia are in there. However, I do think Michigan or Ohio State, probably Michigan, will be kicked out. It relies on if Oregon can go 12-1, TCU loses a game or two, Michigan loses a game, Tennessee doesn't make it to loses another game or something. Oregon is a very situational playoff team, but they are a playoff caliber team, and that's why I've got them at number 6 today. And moving on to our top 5, they were our second team out. So now we are going to talk about my first team out. And my first team out just lost this last week. Their first loss, the former number 1 ranked team in the nation, the Tennessee Volunteers. And the reason I put them from 1 to 5 is because I did not get impressed at all the way they played. Hendon Hooker did not play good at all. No downs and 1 interception. They had 1 touchdown the entire game from a Tennessee squad who has scored 59, 34, 63, 38, 40, 52, 65, 44. They have not had a game under 30 points, and they only had 1 touchdown this entire week. I really can't say much other than that. Georgia's defense mauled them. 6 total sacks. They had 6 sacks. And this is a big thing, too. Tennessee had 0 sacks. You can never beat a team if you have 0 sacks. Georgia controlled the entire game. I'm pretty sure it's evident who number 1 is this week. But Tennessee at 5, I think, is the right place to put them. I think they're still a better team than Oregon and UCLA, LSU, USC. It's just they looked so embarrassing. They looked embarrassing. And that's why I'm going to have them at 5. And then starting off, first team in, number 4, TCU. I love saying it, too. I'm Horned Frog for life. Go Frogs, even though I don't even go there. 34-24 against Texas Tech. They had a challenge. They were down 17-13 going into the 4th, and they scored 21 unanswered. I mean, that shows something. Great teams find great ways to win. And Max Duggan is showing himself how to win. They only had 23 attempts in this game. With Kendre Miller, though, 158 yards and a touchdown on 21 carries. He is a monster. I mean, the special teams did great. Here's my thing with Max Duggan is he has 24 touchdowns in the air and only 2 interceptions. But also, running the ball, he had 4 touchdowns and 282 yards. And that's honestly a down year for him. He's used to having 500, 400 in his sophomore year, he had 10 touchdowns. But this year, he's showing he's legit. He's the next red-headed monster at TCU, looking like Andy Dalton out there, with having more yards right now this year than he has any of the rest of the years, and having more touchdowns than the rest of the years. He's at an elite level. I think he's a Heisman candidate, a dark horse, if he can get his stats a little higher. I mean, TCU's 9-0. They're 9-0. They're turning a lot of heads. They've got very promising wins. 10-point win against Texas Tech, 10 points win against Western Virginia, 10-point win against Kansas State, the overtime win against Oklahoma State, Kansas, demolishing Oklahoma when they played them. This team is legit. The teams don't just become 9-0 for a reason. A huge challenge, however, against Texas. This is a big challenge for them. And I mean, this is make or break here. This is going to be the hardest game they've played the entire year. They've got Baylor and Iowa State after. This team, if they finish the season and they go undefeated, they win the conference championship. This team is making the playoff, and they'll finally make the playoff after what happened to them in 2014. I don't care that Ohio State was the number 4 seed and ended up winning it all. That TCU got robbed. And Quentin Johnson's been looking like a first round wide receiver. Just keep watching him. I mean, TCU's got so many guys on here that just have over 15 yards per catch. It's just this team is good. This team is good. It makes me happy. It makes TCU looks like a great program again. It's amazing it's an amazing feeling. And so I'm going to move on. I'm going to stop boasting about my favorite college, but moving on at number 3, we have the former number 5 team. We have Michigan, who is also a 9-0 squad. J.J. McCarthy, I would say, is looking pretty okay for pretty decent. I mean, for a Michigan squad who is known for their run game. I mean, 282 yards. They had 2 guys with 109 yards on the ground. 282 yards. Michigan is just known for ground pound, and they're showing it. I mean, they've just been beating up teams this entire year. Maryland gave them their only big really challenge. Maybe Iowa too. But they've just been beating teams to the ground this year. And it's kind of nice to see them doing that right now. Because I'm hoping for a 9-0, an undefeated versus undefeated matchup. I mean, come on. Blake Corum has 1,187 yards, 16 touchdowns, not even 200 attempts. He has an average of 6 yards per carry. 6 yards per carry. That is crazy. That is insane. This team is good. But the problem is they're in the same conference as Ohio State, who they're going to play probably, in my opinion, will be 11-0 versus 11-0. Winner makes the conference championship. Just like last year, and I frankly don't think they'll beat this Ohio State squad, which I do have at number 2. Ohio State. They played Northwestern. They didn't look very good against Northwestern. Their defense looked amazing, giving up only 7 points, but they gave up those 7 points before they even scored. They only scored 21 points, and I mean, it was kind of carried by Mayan Williams, who had 111 yards and 2 touchdowns, while C.J. Stroud played like absolute garbage. I mean, he was 10 for 26, 76 yards, no touchdowns and no interceptions, which is good. But all 3 of their touchdowns on the ground. Northwestern had 206 yards on the ground, but Ohio State had 207. But Ohio State still, that's the thing, they look bad. And C.J. Stroud only had 76 yards through the air. Now, I think there might have been weather problems. Maybe. Yeah, there was wind problems, but like, even with the wind, I mean, Northwestern was 10 for 14. C.J. Stroud, you were 10 for 26. The wind's not an excuse if you have the same amount of completions with 12 more attempts. That's not an excuse. You're a first-round caliber quarterback, and you're playing like that. However, it's just this team's so good. This team is a very good team. I mean, they just go out there and dominate any team. And I mean, that game last week against Penn State, they showed something that we haven't really seen. And they were very good against Penn State in that fourth quarter, scoring 28 points. It was 16-14 going into the fourth quarter. Penn State had scored quite a couple points. And then all of a sudden, Ohio State was like, all right, they had their fun. Let's go ruin it. And then they all of a sudden just went off and ended up winning the game. I mean, if we go to the fourth quarter, let me go right here. It was 16-13 or 14, as I said. Penn State goes up 21-16, and then they fumble, turn the ball. So they fumble, and Ohio State scores off of that. And then Ohio State gets the ball. So they score, go 23-21. Ohio State forces a fumble. Then they score again. Penn State gets a field goal. Then Ohio State scores again, and then they get a pick six. They had like 28 points in the span of maybe 5 minutes, I think, in that game. That is the Ohio State that we all know. And that's the Ohio State we're going to see for the rest of the season, despite the bad game against Northwestern. And that is why I got them at number 2. And number 1, for my second time doing the rankings, is going to be the University of Georgia. I mean, there's no one else you can put at number 1. Their offense, defense, coaching staff. It's just the trainers, the equipment managers, the freaking fans, the dude tailgating out back who's 12 beers down. Everybody, everything at Georgia is just top notch, top in the country. This team is legit, and we're starting to see a change in the SEC where it's like, is it actually now Georgia's turn in the SEC? Is it no longer Alabama? It's time for Georgia's dynasty. That's something that people are saying. Now for me, I don't know. I think it's kind of early, but it's just this Georgia team is so good. You didn't think they could improve off of how good they were last year? Well, they are. They're still that good. Maybe not points given up points wise. Last year they gave up less points, but they're just still so good. They're still beating teams by a lot. The only team they haven't not beaten by at least 2 scores, I said that like I'm from the country. Oh my gosh, is Missouri, 26-22. Who gave them a scare? Other than that, they won by 14, 22, 55, 32, 16, 41, 33, and 46. This team is going to make it to the national championship. Mark my words. That's all I'm going to say, unless they play TCU. No, I'm just kidding. They're just Georgia. They're gonna make it to the national championship, and that's gonna wrap up my top 25. However, all right, tomorrow we're gonna have something big. We're gonna have the NFL podcast, mid-season awards, playoff previews. See what we think is gonna happen in the playoff predictions. Sorry. So tune in for that tomorrow. But this one's going to be wrapped up right now. I appreciate everyone for listening through the whole thing. If you did, make sure to follow the socials and everything. Keep updated. And this was a good one. I thought it was a great one, personally. And let me know what your top 25 is. What do you think I got wrong? What do you think I got right? I'm going to post on Instagram the top 6 from this episode, and we'll go from there, and maybe come back next week or 2 weeks from now and do another ranking. But I love talking about college football. This one's been fun, and that's all from me. I will see y'all next one.